Thank all of you for coming. We have a record-setting attendance yet again. We thought 290 people last year was good. This is better. I explained to Gerald, who's our lovely host here at the Willard, that he needs to find us a bigger hotel. So it is my pleasure tonight to get to the heart of the program. There's definitely one of the best reasons for coming here tonight is the opportunity we've had to all get together and talk to each other, though I would love it if you stopped talking now. And to catch up with people that we haven't seen in a very long time. And if there's anything that WEC does, its intention is to bring people together, to make them smarter, and to move them forward in their careers. Tonight, we have the opportunity to honor someone who helps WEC achieve their goal. Back in a year I meant to look up but didn't have time to. WEC decided that we wanted to have an award for someone who made a special contribution in terms of what they gave to the organization. We called it initially the Good Guy Award, and I can tell this story because Kevin's not here. Because the first honoree was the inspiration for the Champion Award. Kevin Ewing had been a board member at WEC, and he had been incredibly active in encouraging young women in his organization to get involved in WEC and to encourage those of us who got involved to stay involved. We have honored a lot of different, not a lot, but a select few gentlemen as WEC champions. Since Kevin, we honored Senator Bingaman, we honored John Rowe, we honored Fred Krupp, we honored Charlie Curtis of the UN Foundation. It's been a very august lineup. But this year, we went back to the real core of what the board felt the Champion Award was all about. And this year, we make that award to Branko Terzic. And we do it not because of Branko's fantastic resume or his accomplishments. Indeed, there's been many venues in which he's been honored for those. But tonight, we honor him for what he has done for a whole lot of people in this room personally. He gave me 2 pieces of advice that I have cherished very dearly. The first was when I was getting divorced. And I asked him whether or not I should go back to my maiden name. And Branko said, as only Branko can, "My dear, the franchise is young enough to survive a rebranding." I think only my dad appreciates that as much as I do. The other piece of advice he gave me was a very serious one, delivered in a very gentle and heartfelt way. But those of you who know me, especially those of you who know me well, will appreciate its importance. And that was when Branko invited me to be a moderator at an event he was hosting. And he said, "Darling, you're smart, you are wonderful, but you don't need to be flipped to be heard." And there's a lot of times I still remember that, particularly the first time I meet someone, especially a client. And it served me very, very well, and I think that it has helped me move along on the road to the professional that I have become. And Branko was one of many special mentors I have had. So the real moment of arriving, though, as a professional, is when you work in your professional environment and someone has been nice to you and they've been good to you, but you know that you have succeeded in becoming the professional that they wanted to see you be when they call you and ask your opinion. So, Branko, I'm happy to announce you as our 2008 WCEE champion.
I've given you other advice as well.
Yeah, I know, but not all of it.
Okay, where's our multi-seater camera? Perfect. All right, we've got the camera. All right.
Oh, here he is on the left.
Okay, here we go. All right, we're good. All right.
All right, put that right there. I also gave Christy a piece of advice. I said, don't ever read a speech. Which tonight I won't take. Madam President, ladies and gentlemen, my fellow honoree, Linda Fisher, this Champion Award bestowed upon me this evening by the members of the Women's Council on Energy and Environment has a very personal meaning and value because it comes from dear friends and colleagues with whom I've had the pleasure to work over these many years. So thank you, my dear friends, for this award and to be called a champion. And what am I a champion of exactly? Well, I believe I've tried to be a champion of women's rights, but even more so, it's part of what I believe is necessary for full human rights for all humanity. The fight for women's rights was and is a long one. Eleanor Roosevelt wrote in 1941 that the battle for the individual rights of women is one of long standing, and none of us should countenance anything which undermines it, end of quote. My own awareness of women's concerns for women's rights grew out of the personal stories of three women very dear to me and important to me: my mother, my wife, and my daughter. My mother's story, so very familiar to many women of her generation, was one of frustrated education and career aspirations caused by the interruption of her life by World War II, 10 years, 5 years of war, and 5 years in refugee camps. Oliveira's ambitions to continue her medical studies were frustrated by the invasion of her country by the Nazis, and so she served as a nurse and even put her life on the line by volunteering to look after the high mortality typhus patients in the refugee camps in post-war Europe. Coming to this country from a displaced persons camp in Germany after World War II, there were no college scholarships available and certainly no medical school slots open for a 30-year-old woman, mother of two, an immigrant, who had aspired to become a doctor. My wife's story is a bit more positive, as she aspired to be an architect, but her counselor and others in Milwaukee in the 1960s discouraged her from that career choice because I believe that they felt that there was a low probability that she would have a fair chance at what that time was a male-dominated profession. Judith went on to become a successful career as a set and costume designer and would have continued in that career had I not failed to mail her resume off to faraway Houston, Texas, and instead asked her to marry me and share my life.
Give me that thing back.
The third story is that of my daughter Elizabeth, who told me that she chose to work at Deloitte after graduating in accounting, not because I was there, but because it not only had a significant percentage of women partners, but also had a woman as the chairman of the board, all as the result of a decade-long women's initiative. And so in 3 generations, progress has been made, but not for every woman, not in every career field, not in every industry, and not in every office. I could not help my mother in her professional aspirations, nor my wife when she was starting university. Obviously, I clearly would do anything I could, as a father would for his daughter, to make sure that she got a fair chance. We see the Women's Council on Energy and Environment has given me an opportunity to share my professional experiences and knowledge with other men's mothers, wives, and daughters, the women who will be the next generation of leaders in the professional fields of energy and environment in this country. It has been my honor and pleasure to mentor a number of the women present here at this dinner. I take great personal pride in their success to date, and I look forward to celebrating their many future accomplishments. In looking through the books in my library for some motivation for this speech, I found by chance the following text, which describes how I hope I am remembered someday by those of you here. Quote, "I was not a gifted person, but I was always deeply interested in every manifestation of life, good or bad. I never let slip an opportunity to increase my knowledge and conditions. Everything was grist for my mill, not only the things I saw, but the people I met. I really had only 3 assets. I was keenly interested, I accepted every challenge and every opportunity to learn more, and I had great energy and discipline. As a result, I have never had to look for interests to fill my life." That was another quote by Eleanor Roosevelt, a remarkable woman of an earlier generation, a columnist, later a world leader as chairman, the first chairman of the United Nations Human Rights Commission. Ladies and gentlemen, as a man who fancies himself somewhat of a good dancer, I do have one special hero, Fred Astaire, but as Judy has reminded me, Ginger Rogers did everything Fred did, but as a woman, she did it in high heels and backwards. So keeping Ginger in mind, allow me to end my comments by stating that I believe women can overcome any natural barriers as long as given a fair chance. That I will always champion. Thank you very much.
I love that Fred Astaire, Ginger Rogers analogy. It's always been one of my favorites. I'm still talking. Thank you. I know that side of the room, it's a problem. The other person that WEC has chosen to honor tonight, if I stop spitting into the microphone, is Linda Fisher, the Chief Sustainability Officer at DuPont. And the reason we're honoring Linda Fisher tonight, is that the Merit table over there that's so loud? Oh. Is because Linda is emblematic, I think, of what WEC has been, what WEC is, and what WEC wants to be. Linda's career took her from her mastery of things like pesticides and other things kind of yucky, and gave her the opportunity to apply that knowledge of what she learned and how to manage the risks and exposures related to that into a corporate strategy to adapt to what may prove to be the biggest challenge we may yet have facing this planet, how we're going to grow and be sustainable. This is not unlike WEC's own transition. When I joined WEC back in 1992, our interest groups centered on fabulous areas like Superfund, RCRA. The energy subcommittee was like this little itty bitty thing. I think their most active year was the year that Mary Glass put together 3 brown bags on electricity restructuring. But over the last decade plus, 15 plus years now, WEC has changed. It's not that we still don't care about things like pesticides, hazardous waste, what we put into the environment, what we put into our bodies. But we're looking at different things as well, and we're integrating into those how we're going to cope with them. It's opened new fields, it's opened new disciplines of science. And so her career has mirrored a lot about how WEC has changed as an organization and the things that we as a group are interested in now. She had the opportunity, has the opportunity, she's earned it to help pave the way to establish best practices, She represents a prominent global firm. Oh, I hate it when my pages get out of order. This happened to me in Baton Rouge the other night. It was very awkward. I'm talking to different slides. It was odd. But as a member of a global leader who has looked at both for their leadership and innovation, but also as the source of where change needs to come. Because this is an organization that has brought great innovation, great advances in technology and science, but also has had to deal with all these different issues related to the materials that are used. And in fact, you could say that, our great global corporations are both the leaders and the poster child for where we want to see change in our environment going forward. So for this reason, we wanted to honor a woman who's had the opportunity to serve in government at one of the highest levels, who's gone on to take a position to change and establish best practices going forward, and to be a leader and show not only can we do it all backwards and in high heels, but as the winds change around us and as technology moves forward, we can take everything we know and we can use it to be successful in our next job and in our next career and as we move forward in life. So I hope that Linda's going to share with us a little bit about where she's been, where she's traveled, China lately. And it is my honor and my distinct pleasure to present Linda Fisher of DuPont with the 2008 WCEE Woman of the Year.
Okay, where do they hide the camera? Okay, this one here?
Yeah, you get to keep that.
Thank you all very much. I'm going to give this to you. I'm afraid I'll knock it down. Thank you, Chris, for those very nice words, and thank you to everybody out here. As my friends from EPA know, I'm used to handing out the awards. I'm not used to getting the awards. So this is all a bit uncomfortable and just a little bit awkward, but it's also very special. When I look at the list of people who've received this award in the past, Eileen Clausen, Katie McGinney, who was here earlier today, Catherine Fuller, and others, I'm very honored to be in their mix. They are all a group of remarkable women, of remarkable leaders who have really made a difference to the environment, and I'm truly honored to be in their company. And I want to give a special thanks to you, Chris, and to WCEE for this recognition as well. WCEE does many things well, but it will be probably most remembered for the impact it's had on so many women's careers, women who have sought to form their professional lives in the area of energy and the environment. And I also want to congratulate you, Branko, for your efforts in this area. I personally have been remarkably lucky to have worked for a number of people who have mentored me in my career, particularly the different administrators at EPA, people who really guided me, pulled me back from the cliff when I was ready to go right over it, but who pushed me ahead and let me be recognized. And so I will forever be grateful to them and encourage everyone in the room to take mentoring serious. You never really know whose life you're going to affect and where they're going to end up. I've been involved in the environmental area in one capacity or another for many, many years. I don't really want to say how many. But I can't think of a more dynamic time to be engaged in this issue. When I graduated from law school in the 80s and I headed off to EPA, I remember my older brother, who's also a lawyer, saying to me in a voice that older brothers reserve for younger sisters, "The environment. Well, that'll be a really nice boutique little practice." And we laugh about that today when we get together. And we laugh about it because who would have thought back in the 80s, during the free-for-all over cleanup standards under Superfund, or the debate about joint and several liability under Superfund, that 2 decades later, 4 leading environmental groups and 8 leading companies would join together and form US CAP and call on the Congress to pass mandatory climate change legislation, that industry would ask to be regulated, and that the environmental community would ask for legislation that took into account cost effectiveness, and more importantly, a market-based approach. Who would have thought, with the great debates over whether citizens should have a voice at their Superfund sites located in their own neighborhoods, that 2 decades later, companies would actually seek out environmental activists to sit on their advisory boards, or even more remarkably, to review buyout decisions, as we saw with the Texas Pacific Group and TXU and NRDC and Environmental Defense. Who would have thought that when the great environmental pieces of legislation were written on air, on water, on waste, on pesticides, that the breadth of this issue would evolve into something much broader, perhaps still very ambiguous, called sustainability. I am frequently asked whether or not I think that the push towards sustainability in industry is greenwash, whether it is hype, or whether it's real and will have meaningful change. Now, as everybody here knows, it's very hard to speak of industry as if it's one homogeneous group that thinks the same, reacts the same, or is even motivated by the same things. And in fact, for every company that we can talk about struggling to become more sustainable, we can all point to some other company that hasn't found the path at all. And even at DuPont, as my colleagues who are here with me will attest, though we have a corporate vision statement and a mission that clearly talk about sustainable growth within the company, we have pretty divergent discussions about what it means. But I do believe that something genuinely transformative is beginning, and I do stress beginning, to take shape in industry. And although I think that there is greenwash going on and there is a lot of hype, I believe that the push within industry to become more sustainable is real, and I think it's going to be lasting. I believe this because sustainability is becoming more and more embraced by the business side of companies, and not just the environment, safety, and health divisions in companies. It is more and more becoming a part of the conversation about growth, and not just about risk reduction or regulation or how to run our plants better. And our business leaders are seeing the changing face of the marketplace, where citizens, where customers and consumers, in addition to the environmental activists, are asking about environmental impacts and resource implications. So the center of focus for addressing sustainability in the environment for natural resource usage is beginning to shift inside of companies. And it is moving out of that boutique area of environmental law that my brother talked about, and it is becoming a part of business. And that is important. It's important because it is changing the way people think about their business models, about their product lines, and it means integrating concerns about energy and natural resources, about climate change, about toxic exposure, about water consumption, into the fundamental business strategy and even the product design. It's about growth and about a growth strategy and about where you put your research and development dollars, not just how you're going to run your plants. And it is about customers setting standards and customers monitoring our behavior, not just government. And again, it's the business side of corporations that are engaged in this because they see that the marketplace is demanding it. We are seeing the growing demand in the marketplace by people like you and people like me for far more sustainable solutions. We are all, or many of us, are becoming much more aware. Our concerns might be about the cost of gasoline or the impacts of high prices of heating oil or even the war in Iraq. But the result is the same. We want more energy efficiency. We may be confused about which chemical causes which harm to us, but we want less exposure. And we may not be completely consistent in our use of energy and not clear how it really ties to climate change. But all the weird weather we experience, like last night with all the tornadoes in the South and the Midwest, quite honestly, are beginning to freak people out a bit. And they want to see change, and they want to see it in the market. Other things are changing too. In the 1980s, you frequently heard people in the industry people in the environmental community be talked about by industry. And one of the things the folks in industry would always say, I just wish the environmental community understood business. Well, they do. The NGOs have started to understand the marketplace, and they do understand competition. And they know how to use both to get environmental and to drive environmental progress. Their focus is now on the marketplace, and it takes several forms. It might be a market-based campaign that attacks a product or a company, and DuPont's been on the receiving end of those. Or it might be by joining in a partnership to create incentives to bring new and better products to the marketplace, and DuPont's been involved in those. It might be a local event, or it might be a global event, but the end result is the same, and that is change. Because when consumers that are influenced by government, by the NGOs, or based on their own knowledge and information, however imperfect that might be, start to make their presence known in the marketplace, companies change. And when companies change, then industries change. At DuPont, we are beginning to see this change. We tend to sell more business to business rather than to consumers. We sell to the automobile industry, we sell to the construction industry, to the agricultural industry, to the electronics industry. Our customers largely are other businesses, but they are beginning to demand from us different kinds of products. They want materials that will make their products that they sell directly in the marketplace more sustainable. They want materials that are made from renewably sourced feedstocks rather than petroleum. They want materials that improve the energy efficiency of their products or their automobiles. They want to be able to build buildings that will be more energy efficient. To do that, they need the DuPonts of the world to create the materials that will make their products more sustainable. Companies like DuPont can reduce their risks by reducing their environmental footprint, but that's not how we're going to grow our business. We will only grow our business in this new, much more environmentally conscious marketplace by changing the kinds of products and services that we bring to the market. GE recognized this when they announced their Eco-Imagination program. Walmart and Home Depot did the same when they announced that they were going to bring different products and put them on their store shelves. At DuPont, just over a year ago, for the first time, we announced sustainability goals that address the marketplace. And we talked about setting revenue targets, revenue goals for building businesses, driving growth by bringing products to the market that would reduce our customers, not our own, greenhouse gas emissions. We also will only grow our businesses if we recognize the growing role of NGOs in shaping the markets that we want to sell into, and to give them a louder voice and a bigger seat at our table, to help us identify the market areas and the opportunities, as well as to avoid pitfalls. Successful companies have always been those who know where their customers are going before their customers know. And they are ahead because they anticipate what the market's going to demand, and they start putting their research and development dollars in those places. It is the success and the timing of that, putting the R&D dollars to time the new products for when the market is going to want them, that determines who's going to be winners and losers in the marketplace. If you look at the trends today, trends around energy, both supply and price, trends around water use, both supply and quality, trends around food and food production. If you couple that with a much more aware consumer, if you sprinkle in the global political agenda on which the environment has become a much bigger issue than ever before, and you add to that the growing importance of the uncommon partnership between industry and NGOs, partnerships that 2 decades ago would have been unthinkable by either group, then you can see that economic success will come first to those companies that integrate sustainable growth into their business strategies. When customers such as Walmart, Home Depot, and Toyota ask companies like DuPont to produce a different kind of product, to be able to understand and verify the content of the materials that we sell to them, or that request only renewably sourced materials, When those requests come to us from the marketplace and are driven by more than just government regulation, something really transformative is happening. And to my friends at EPA, I don't want you to feel insecure or left behind, because this new dynamic between industry and these partnerships with NGOs will only be enhanced by thoughtful, measured government regulation. Regulations that guide the marketplace, that set the terms and the limits, that sanction the methods and the measurements, and that level the playing field, and that provide industry with the incentives, and more importantly, perhaps, the roadmap for bringing sustainable solutions to the marketplace. And that is why so many companies joined together again to form US CAP with several environmental groups, because we needed that marketplace regulatory program set. We needed the roadmap identified for climate. If those companies that have embarked on this journey towards sustainability, this journey to develop more sustainable business strategies, succeed, and I believe they will, it won't be greenwash. It will be transformative, and I think it'll have remarkable environmental benefits for this planet. It is this invention and innovation from industry that will be guided by sound government action, but in partnership with the NGO communities, that is going to be necessary if we are to combat this planet's largest challenges. I feel very fortunate to have had the opportunity to be engaged in the environment all my life. And it's been a real pleasure to work with so many of you that are here tonight. And again, I want to thank Chris and WEC for recognizing me today. Thank you.
All right, ladies, that's what we get to keep up with. I want to take a couple of minutes just to thank you all again for coming. I'd like to thank again our sponsors who have made it part of the way they do business to believe in this organization. So thank you all for coming. Enjoy your coffee and your desserts. And thank you both to our fantastic honorees. It's an honor and a pleasure to have you with us in 2008.